Today, I'm doing what I do best and taking a camera out into the wilderness and exploring the Appalachian region, searching for the cryptids that have been made so famous on the internet. I'll be out here on the ground investigating their histories, their legends, and their nexus points where they came from, and trying to get to the bottom of why they are so commercialized on TikTok and YouTube. The stories of not deer and feral humans and Bigfoot and the Wendigo and the rake. All of these things are spoken about like they're fact, and as if the Appalachian Mountains are home to death incarnate. Today, I'm gonna be setting the record straight. Or I might get eaten by one of these things, I don't know. Whatever the case is, I do hope you enjoy. Inside of the Appalachian region, an uncountable number of legends exist about creatures of the night, beings that thrive beyond the mortal plane, and things that lurk in the trees that just quite frankly should not be there. Most of these creatures and these entities and these legends are said to be harbingers of death. They hunt, they maim, they kill, they haunt. And these things only seem to exist in the confines of the Appalachian Mountains. If you've been watching the channel for a while, I've gone on several expeditions to hunt down the mysteries of this place, the place I call home. I've visited ghost towns, I've explored other creatures like the Dogman. I've given you a brief glimpse into the history of the culture that we have here, and the past that's slowly fading away before our very eyes. But today in this video, I want to discuss several different creatures, entities, and beings that haunt these woods, the wilderness out there. The rake, the not deer, feral humans, and the Wendigo, even though it's not actually from Appalachia. We'll touch on that later. Many of the things that you know about these beings are not actually true, and it's my job and my goal in today's video to explain that truth to you and to bring it to you in a fun way that's not boring, hopefully. So join me as I go off to the wilderness and hike, hunt, and explore for the ruins of these creatures. I'm entering their own wild domain where they have the upper hand, and if the tales are to be believed, I'm putting myself in the belly of the beast. The internet loves to commercialize the things I'm talking about today. You've undoubtedly seen TikToks or YouTube videos with millions of views talking about these supposed creatures of the night that haunt this beautiful region. And I'm here to tell you today that the truth of the matter, it might be more scary than the actual beings that have been created around them. And I want to express that there are indeed monsters in the woods. They're just not the ones you think of. So today I'm telling their stories. I'm diving into the lore. If you love videos where I go out and explore and try to find evidence of things like this, then you're in for a treat. This is a super fun video, recorded over several weeks, and I really hope you enjoy it. I'm bringing nothing but a camera, a couple friends, and my will to not get eaten by an eldritch horror into these woods, onto these trails, and I sincerely hope that you stick around and that you enjoy the show. Thank you for watching. To begin this video, I want to tell you about the legend of the not deer. This is one of my favorite cryptids, and it just so happens that it stems from the region of Appalachia. For each of these creatures in the sequential order that I'm going over, I'll talk about their histories, where they came from, all that stuff. Then I'll get into the on-the-ground adventure, looking for evidence of them, and kind of just perusing through their territory and seeing if I can stir anything up. The not deer is one of the most famous creatures on the internet, as it's gone very viral on TikTok and YouTube specifically in the last couple years. Undoubtedly, you've seen several videos pop up on your page of these weird deer-like beings standing up on two legs, walking around, or maybe having kind of a weird, disconfigured face. Specific examples of these creatures are said to resemble a normal American deer from a distance, but once you get closer to it, you realize that there's something that's off about them. Something is not right. Kind of the uncanny valley effect takes over, and your brain thinks it's looking at something that you know, but it's not. Deer. Get it? Not deer. Even though these not deer appear to be fully grown animals, they move around very strangely, like they were just born. They kind of writhe around and look all disjointed. sort of like a newborn deer would. Reports have claimed that they appear as if they have more bones than they should, and weird ridges and bone structures can be seen poking out from the skin. The words ungainly or distorted are often thrown around when discussing these beings. And for good reason too. If you saw something that looked like a creature you've seen a ton, walking around on two legs and kind of just glitching around like that, you'd think it'd be pretty weird as well. But beyond that, the most notable feature and the thing that everybody talks about revolves around the eyes of these alleged beings. When you look at a regular deer's eyes, just a normal creature, they look almost innocent, kind of skittish and stuff. But when you look in the eyes of a not deer, they seem to be wise, almost human in a way, and their eyes are said to be on the front of their head, whereas a normal deer has eyes on the side of its head because it's prey. When someone has an encounter with a not deer, it's really reported to be a very awkward scene. People claim that the hairs on the back of their neck and their arms kind of stand up, and they can tell from a deep point of view in their body that something is different about what they're witnessing. This is not normal. Kind of like Neanderthal and Homo habilis, how they don't really look exactly alike, and that's probably where Uncanny Valley comes from. That's the same feeling you get here. On top of that, these not deer often exemplify behaviors that are not that of a regular animal. For instance, they're known to approach humans, and they do so aggressively, like they're hunting them. And if you've ever been in the woods, really that doesn't happen. Deer are pretty skittish. The most terrifying and most popular claim about not deer is that those who have seen them or witnessed them on trail cams have seen them stand up on two legs and walk away. And I think not deer as an entire concept kind of shows the visualization of the Appalachian region, right? Because on the surface, it looks like a deer, but when you stare at it a little bit longer, these weird eccentricities start popping up, and by eccentricities, I mean these horrifying abilities that they allegedly have, and that's the same thing with the wilderness, right? If you're visiting this region, you see how pretty it is. You see the woods, you see these amazing rivers and streams and valleys, you see some cool people, and then once you sit there and look for a while, you see a region that's been taken advantage of and forgotten about. As far as the origins of the famous not deer, I can trace them back to the mid-2010s from a 4chan post. The exact date of this 4chan post is September 25th, 2014, which is a long time ago at this point, and it details this poster's experience with stumbling into the woods and finding the bodies of mangled animals. A little while later, he goes back to that same area with his dog, and he spots something off in the distance, kind of stalking him from the grass. And then he says, quote, "I very clearly see some really weird looking thing with pointed ears and an elongated snout crossing my path on all fours, while moving in a way that reminded me of a deer trying to learn how to walk immediately after being born. Only it doesn't look like a deer, more like a cobbled together toy of one." After seeing this thing kind of walking and stumbling around the tall grass, he then sprints back to his house and runs away, obviously. Later that night, when the boy gets back to his house, the creature that he saw earlier seems to have followed him, and he comes and he kind of taps on its window outside, and he's kind of scratching the outside of the house while there's little poor kids inside, and he's doing things that terrorize the young child. Only for, at an abrupt point later in the night, this not deer outside runs away, and he's never seen again. The boy is, of course, traumatized after seeing this, and he told his story on 4chan. Now, right off the bat, that does read like a creepypasta from the early 2010s. We've all heard them. But this is the earliest that I could trace back to any mention of something that's not like a deer, like a not deer. And that's as far back as it goes. Another thing that sticks out to me about the story of the not deer and its discourse online is the similarities that it has to the Wendigo. Now, the Wendigo is not actually an Appalachian legend. It's from the Great Lakes region, and I'll get to that in a second. But the two stories have a lot of similarities, especially in internet culture. These ungainly beasts kind of walking around like they just got born, like they're wearing the skin of something natural. They have deer heads and deer antlers, and they're uncanny to look at. And they all seem to have a sort of bloodlust that really can only be described as that. But besides what I just told you, the only other nexus point I can find for this story is from a Reddit post from 2019, which specifically coins the term not deer. And as far as I can tell, there's not really any basis in spirituality or religion that talks about these creatures. Other than maybe a shape-shifting demon or two, the not deer kind of stands on its own as a campfire story. And I think that's what it works as perfectly. Even if these creatures aren't real, which they're There might be, I don't know. It is the quintessential campfire story that you want to tell your friends when you're sitting around in the middle of the woods late at night. For some reason, as humans, things that look and behave slightly off really intrigue us, and that's why you're all watching this video, and that's why these legends and rumors and tales have been passed down for decades. Or in this case, just a decade. Skeptics of the not deer theory say that the people that see these creatures are simply witnessing animals that are infected with the chronic wasting disease, which is pretty much this deer zombie virus that makes their skin kind of rot away and them to behave opposite of how a deer would. When deer are dealing with chronic wasting disease, they approach humans, they foam at the mouth, their flesh falls off their body, they look like a zombie, and they do indeed exhibit the behaviors that are not deer. And they move like they just got born. Whatever the case is, I like to have whimsy, I wish these things were real, but as I said, I think cryptids like this are so interesting to talk about and look for and research, because that's just what they are. The scariness is in the fact that they're just little critters, little goblins in the woods that can't really do harm, but they're just terrifying enough to make you not want to go out there alone. But whatever the case is, let's go out and hit the trail and see if we can stir up a not deer, maybe a feral human, maybe anything else that's out there. I don't know. Let's go see what we can do.
Look at this YouTuber. Who's YouTuber?
The West Virginia wilderness. Endless Wall Trail. Supposedly a location where you can find the things we're talking about in this video. Allegedly. So we're out here today to try to find it. You're coming with me. We have a wild man in the woods. This is a feral human right here.
Oh my god.
Earlier today I was whitewater rafting in the New River Gorge National Park, New River Gorge. Newest national park out here. I didn't know that, but apparently it is. And now I'm out here hiking this trail. There's like nobody out here. It's a Saturday, but it is beautiful. Like, look at this. Like I said in the Appalachia video, the Dogman video, these woods are like wise almost. They have like an intelligence to them. Very different from the West Coast woods in the Northeast. And hopefully we'll catch something on footage, or film as they say. Hopefully so. I'm not alone, so maybe that'll attract whatever these things are. Who knows?
Pose for me, baddies.
Slim thick, no tummy.
That's going in the video, by the way.
You know what they say about stairs in the woods? Nearing the top here, perhaps? Not too bad so far. Not near as bad as the Kmore Mines incident. Real ones remember that. Wow. That's, we were literally down there. Like,
Yeah, we were
just now.
No.
That's insane. Jesus, that's crazy. Whoa.
Dead. Good thinking. Oh, alright.
It's insane, dude. Sure is beautiful up here for cursed land, like the internet says.
Back here though.
Cade, please don't die.
Okay, that's too close.
Okay, Bo, I got you. Thanks.
Where's the beer?
Oh yeah. Diamond Head Lookout. Down there, it's where we were rafting earlier. Those breaks right there, that was like the second rapids we did. This isn't a vibe. I don't know what is. Yeah.
So now that I'm back from the trail, did I find a large carnivorous beast that walks on 2 feet and that eats humans? No, I didn't. But I did get to explore a beautiful region in a forgotten part of the country, which most people overlook. I mean, you saw the things that were there and the beauty that they offer. I had a fantastic day on that specific one. I went whitewater rafting, I went hiking, got some amazing local food, met some amazing people. And even though I had the aim of searching for this horrific monster, I found quite the opposite, actually. I found people that I could really relate to and people that I enjoyed being around. But the beauty of cryptids like the Not Deer is that they don't have to be based in reality. They don't have to have weight to them, because if they're real, they're real. And if they're not, they're not. Because you can't really prove otherwise, right? It's definitely an entertaining story, and it's definitely a cool cryptid that the internet has constructed around these woods. And no matter the case, we have no idea what goes on deep in the wilderness here. For the next creature in this video, I will be discussing the Wendigo and the misconceptions and the inconsistencies that the internet has kind of swayed it into be. But this is an entity that's much more spiritual, much more based in history, and in fact, carries a lot more weight to it. And if you decide to go out into the woods of Appalachia and hike around and explore, and a feral human attacks you while you're journeying, you're gonna want to have somebody on your side that you can trust. And that somebody might be Morgan & Morgan, America's largest personal injury law firm. Morgan & Morgan has over 1,000 attorneys that operate in all 50 states. So you know you'll have someone to back you up wherever you're at. Your injury could be worth millions. And Morgan & Morgan do not settle for lowball offers. Insurance companies often lowball their clients, so it's very important to Morgan & Morgan that they fight to get you the money you deserve if you become their client. They achieved significant verdicts in the past couple months for victims that were involved in life-altering crashes, like $12 million in Florida, which is 34 times the highest insurance offer, or $26 million in Philadelphia, which is 40 times the highest insurance offer. And the best part is, it's absolutely free unless you win. If you ever got seriously injured, your case could be worth millions, and you're only a few clicks away from potentially changing your life. It's so easy, and you can start your claim now with Morgan & Morgan at www.forthepeople.com/spoogly, which can be found in the description or by scanning the QR code on your screen from your phone's camera. Thank you to Morgan & Morgan for sponsoring this video, and let's get back to it. Like with most things, the internet has bastardized and misconstrued the entire story and the history of the Wendigo entity. Truthfully, as I've said multiple times in this video, the Appalachian region cannot take credit or even be the home of this being. But of course, the World Wide Web has conjoined the two together and created this almost stigma that they are somehow intertwined. So now I want to tell you about the real story of the Wendigo. The legends of these spirits originate from the Algonquin peoples of the Great Lakes region. And rather than Wendigos being big, lanky, pale beasts, you know the one you're thinking of, you've probably seen pictures of them, they actually don't even have one single form that you can attribute to them. And on top of that, they're much more grounded in reality, especially as it relates to human greed, gluttony, the freezing cold, death, isolation, and bloodlust, which again, they're all human emotions. The story of the Wendigo is really about reaching the darkest recesses of human nature, and what we will do when we're overcome with hunger and angst and isolation, like I said. Will we become that proverbial beast that you've seen Hollywoodified, or will we keep our humanity and not fall victim to it? These are the themes that you need to be thinking of when discussing the Wendigo. Some people do claim that the creature's natural physical appearance is that large humanoid thing with a deer head and antlers and blood from its teeth and flesh missing, and that they have this insatiable desire to eat people and to have blood consumed inside of them. That's one version of the story for sure, but I don't think it's the one that the Algonquin peoples are telling, as far as I can see, at least. The story I want to tell you involves a symptom and a disease known as the Wendigo psychosis. And yes, I said symptom and disease because it's both. This is the feeling that a human is overcome with when they find themselves starving, in dire need of food and sustenance, but their brain convinces them that the only way to survive that is by cannibalism. The most famous example throughout history of Wendigo psychosis is from the very, very famous and infamous story of the Swift Runner tribesmen. I'll tell you about that in a second, because the first instance of Wendigo psychosis being actually coined was in a publication known as the Jesuit Relation. The Jesuit Relation is kind of a chronicle book pamphlet thing that tells the story of missionaries visiting the Great Lakes region spreading their doctrine in the 1600s. They met with many North American tribes as well as Canadian tribes, and an entry to this document reads as follows. What caused us greater concern was the news that met us upon entering the lake, that the men deputed by our own conductor for the purposes of summoning the nations to the North Sea and assigning them a rendezvous where they were to wait our coming, had met their deaths the previous winter in a very strange manner. Those poor men, according to the report given to us, were seized with an ailment unknown to us, but not very unusual among the people we were seeking. They were afflicted with neither lunacy, hypochondria, nor frenzy, but have a combination of all the species of disease, which affects their imaginations and causes them to have a more canine hunger. This makes them so ravenous for human flesh that they pounce upon women, children, and even upon men like veritable werewolves and devour them ferociously without being able to appease or glut their appetite, ever seeking fresh prey, and the more greedily, the more they eat. This ailment attacked our deputies, and as death is the sole remedy amongst these simple people for checking such acts of murder, they were slain in order to stay the course of their madness. So that was a story way back from the 1600s about missionaries coming over, and their guides that were supposed to meet them and take them in, they fell victim to Wendigo psychosis, which as they described is this frenzied werewolf bloodlust where men pounce upon men to consume them. It really is a story of desperation and death, and it's a reminder to us humans that we really have not transcended the mark of being an animal. And it's in those small moments of hunger and anger and pain that that dark beast inside of each of us can come out. But like I briefly mentioned earlier, far and away the most famous and infamous story of Wendigo psychosis is the Swift Runner story, which you probably heard a million times, so I'm going to summarize it here. Essentially, Swift Runner was a trapper and a guide in the Cree tribe in the 1800s. As far as we know in the historical record, he grew up, he had a normal life, he got married, and he had 6 kids. Now, Swift Runner's life would be turned upside down when all the buffalo were killed by the colonists. And when whiskey was introduced to his tribe, he took to the bottles, and it changed him deeply on a spiritual level. He went from being this kind, lighthearted man to being angry and hostile. And as such, his tribe kicked him out and his family, with 6 kids, into the wilderness. When this happened, it was the dead of winter, and he took his mom, his brother, his wife, and his 6 children deep into the timber to try to survive. Only when the next spring came, one man walked out of the wilderness, and it was Swift Runner. He immediately began blabbering this story and weaving this web to anybody that would listen. Everybody starved to death. There was no hope. We all died, and I myself came the closest, but managed to claw my way out of the wilderness. However, his wife's family, noticing that their son-in-law came back without their daughter, quickly realized that this man was not starving at all. They said he was too fat to be starving. Eventually, to prove it, he was forced to take tribesmen back to their camp where Swift Runner set up and show them the starved bodies. But what happened when they arrived there was more disgusting and disturbing than anybody could imagine. When they arrived back at camp, they saw the partially consumed bodies of the entire family. They saw pots filled with flesh and bones being chopped up with flesh still on them, and immediately Swift Runner knew that the jig was up and he was cooked. He then claimed that the spirit of the Wendigo infected his brain and made him do these things. It overtook him and he had no control. Nevertheless, if that was the case or not, Swift Runner was hanged by the neck until dead soon after. This is the perfect example of the true Wendigo spirit, this evil talisman of death and destruction. It is buried deep inside every single person. We've just never had to experience that level of desperation. So you can believe that indeed a Wendigo is a giant creature with a deer head that eats people and consumes people in the woods of Appalachia and the Great Lakes, or you can believe the more truthful thing in the fact that that evil is inside of everybody, and it just peeks out in moments like Swift Runner's. You don't need a 15-foot tall monster in the woods to make this scary. In fact, I would argue it's more scary that it's just a spirit that infects people and causes them to consume others. Whatever the case is, the pop culture version of the Wendigo is indeed cool. It's a great thing to watch. It's very entertaining. It's very scary. And I don't think it's necessarily a bad thing that it's been visualized in that way, but to set the record straight, that's probably not what it is, and it's definitely not in the Appalachian region. And for the record, none of us on this hiking trip were overtaken with Wendigo psychosis. Just putting that out there. But wrapping up the video through this quick interlude, I want to discuss probably the most famous instance of creatures in the woods of Appalachia. And I'm talking about the feral humans that everybody loves to discuss. So let's do it. The concept of feral humans is something that intrigues people all across the country, and the world for that matter. The idea that these wild men exist beyond the bounds of society, out in the hills and the hollers, it's something of a fairy tale. It simultaneously intrigues and also terrifies the average person. Wild men, feral humans, whatever you want to call them, tales of them have existed for many, many years. Feral humans are often brought up as it relates to national parks, specifically the Great Smoky Mountain National Park in the Appalachian Mountains. Oftentimes, these wild men are said to steal cattle and other animals, as well as crops, and even children in some old reports. Some of the disappearances that they're accredited with are very high profile. You've probably heard about the Dennis Martin case. If you haven't, you've not been on the internet for very long. In that case, one of the theories is that a feral human took Dennis away. However, that's probably not true, and I'm actually inclined to believe that there was some insidious behavior from Dennis's own parents that caused him to go missing. I don't even think he was there that day, but that's beside the point. There are other cases of hikers being in the woods claiming they're being watched from a distance by a large, hairy man just kind of staring at them. Feral humans are said to be ungroomed, often stinky, wild men that exist deep in the hollers and the trees and stuff in the mountains. In every single way, they live fully off the land. They get their own food, water, enjoyment out of the wilderness, and I think that kind of scares some individuals. The idea that in modern society, in a country so forward-thinking as the Americas, that people still choose to live in the boonies. Over on the website called the Southern Highlander, they have an entry from a long time ago called The Wild Man of the Woods. And this describes several encounters with these so-called feral people that I want to read to you right here. In 1877, a party of gold miners traveling through the Globe Valley in Caldwell County, North Carolina, encountered what they described as a wild man. Although they only got within 40 yards of the man, one miner claimed that this peculiar specimen of humanity appeared to be a giant 6 foot 5 inches with a funnel-shaped head and 2-inch long dark hair covering his body. When he spotted the miners, he pounded on his chest before turning and bounding off into the woods with the speed of a deer. The party tracked him with guns drawn to a cave deep in the mountains, where they found bones of many animals scattered about, indicating that he'd been living there for a long time. Now, this story is actually very common, and stories like it abound across real life and the internet. Quite literally, it's not an exaggeration to say there are hundreds of other ones that are very, very similar. And these date back all the way to the Civil War period and even before. In 1896, there was reports of a very, very strange being, and even a sketch that came from it titled Wild Man of Chilhowie. 4 hunters encountered this wild man over in eastern Tennessee, and they said that he was large and had a beard that went down to his waist. He had talon-like fingernails and was definitely a wild man. They even claimed that he had tusks instead of teeth, and he seemed more animalistic than human. 4 hunters, thinking they had the man outnumbered, attempted to haul him in, detain him, and take him back to the county, but he was too strong, he overpowered them, and he ran back into the wilderness. And if that story is to be believed, later in 1896, they sent an entire posse into the woods to apprehend this feral human, and they ended up getting him, and they sent him to an insane asylum where he lived out the rest of his days. Reports of these wild men are not necessarily native and geo-locked in Appalachia either. They're reports across the country. In 1883, the Wild Man of Camas was apparently killed with an axe by a group of immigrants in Idaho. The story goes that he was located in the woods, and a posse of civilians went up and kind of surrounded him. There was 40 of them, and he was infuriated at the sight. He became demonic, and he became aggressive and lashed out at them. In 1871, a wild man was encountered over in West Virginia, in the Morgantown area specifically, and he was described in a newspaper as half man, half beast, and he was covered in rags. He had long, bushy, unkempt hair that was matted, and it gave him more of a gorilla-like appearance to the people of the time. This is the excerpt from the newspaper. Warden Fenton captured a wild man single-handedly in the timber near Epsworth Park at 9 o'clock this morning. A skirmish in the brush between the unknown and the warden resulted in the overpowering of the former. He is now in the county jail. A little before 9 o'clock, Al Blair telephoned the warden that a wild man was hiding under the Union Pacific Bridge west of prison. Warden Fenton hastened to the scene. The man had left his hiding, but was tracked into the timber. In a pile of brush, the warden discovered his man. As the warden appeared, the wild man made a lunge with a long club. Warden Fenton pulled out his gun and ordered the man to surrender. His hair was tousled, his shirt open and torn, and his general appearance was that of a wild man. He made no statement and put up a vigorous resistance. He was first taken to the asylum. It was stated that he had been an inmate there, but was released some 4 months ago. So at this point, you're probably realizing that feral humans, wild men, they can differ completely in the reports. Some of these guys and other people, they're just people that left society and had enough of it. They just wanted to get back out to the woods and live there, in peace and harmony. Or they were crazy. And then there's the reports of true beasts that appear to have long nails and fangs and are ferocious hunters. They're giant people. Feral humans as a title kind of encompasses all of that. And in my personal opinion, I believe on a deep down level that people are intrigued by stories of feral humans and wild men and those who live amongst the timber because everybody has that wild streak inside of them, right? Every single individual would love to be that free. So we always tend to find things interesting that we aren't or that we don't have. And for most of us, we're inside of this societal system bound by the chains of employment and things of that nature. These wild men, they're free. Now, obviously, if they're doing bad things, that's not good. But if they're just out there living, let them live. But as Bob Dylan once said, don't criticize what you can't understand. The Appalachian region for decades and decades, as long as anybody can remember, has had its fair share of slander in the media. It's been said that it's uneducated, it's unhealthy, it's backwoods, hicks, if you will. People that don't know what's good for them, they don't know what's up from down and that sort of thing. So apply that same rhetoric to people that live in the woods and have long bushy beards and live off the land, and you've got yourself what the internet calls a feral human. There are plenty of mountain men who live up in the hills to this day, and I know some people that live in the backwoods that really never come out. And they have the choice. Rather than conforming to modernity, they choose to live out there. That's okay. Another part of the feral human argument, and it's talking about on the internet, is that as unfortunate as it is, some families in Appalachia are isolated in the hills and they can't get out. They don't have access to clean food and to education. So instead, they live a life of solitude, not by choice, but because they have to. So at some point, you have to posit the question to yourself, which of us is really the feral human? The ones who live in nature, the ones who harvest their own food, build their own shelter, the ones that can live off the land, or is it the ones that live and work and die in a cardboard box, obsessed with politics and whatever the man says? Now, I'm not arguing for either one of those. You can have your choice of whatever you want to do in this country. That's the beauty of it, or so they say. And there's definitely a balance that you can strike between the two. But all I'm saying is that perspective matters immensely when talking about feral humans and the idea that men and women are not in society and they choose to live out almost as wild animals of the field. We seem crazy to them and they seem out there to us. So I can only imagine the discourse that would happen if we just sat down and talked about it. And just like regular society, there are bad mountain men. There are bad feral people that steal things and do things. And I'm sure, if they're looking at our society from the outside, they see, well, these people are supposed to be civilized, yet they are still committing crimes and stealing and hurting people actively. What I want to express mostly by this video and why I created it to begin with is that these creatures, these beings, these evil entities, feral humans, not deer, wendigos, skinwalkers, all of these harbingers of death, right? They all are said to live in the Appalachian Mountains from the internet. They don't have to be real to be scary. Like I said at the very beginning of the video, there are monsters in the woods, just not these. The real monsters are the people who take advantage of this place. Those who used it for their gain and then upped and left when things got hard. The company towns, the coal companies, the timber logging companies, the railroad companies, and local governments that oppress their people and deny them what they deserve. These are the real evils in the Appalachian Mountains, people. I love a good spooky story as much as you do. In fact, I built an entire career telling spooky stories. I love them. But in this specific case, it's cliche, I know, but the reality of the situation is much scarier than the creatures that are said to live there. Now, I love going out in the woods here at nighttime and hearing the coyotes scream like devils and weird branches snapping and rocks rolling down the hills. It's scary. It's nice to have a little fright. But the beasts like the not deer and the feral humans and the Bigfoot, they all live in the unknown, which that is what Appalachia is to most people. It is the unknown. It's the gray area they don't know much about, or at least they haven't experienced it firsthand. But for those of us who are lucky enough to grow up here, we know all of this. We know the stories. We know the legends. We know that we got told these scary things just so we wouldn't go out and get lost in the woods. We know that something's probably out there watching us, whether it's a hawk or whether it's a coyote or whether it's a bear. We know that. We also know that life is old here. It's older than the trees, like John Denver said. And these creatures that I talked about today, and you and I, we're all a part of it. It's all one big conglomeration, whether we like it or not. And we don't get to choose it, but people tend to fear what they don't know. But I know myself that it is beautifully terrifying to be in the woods of Appalachia at nighttime or anytime alone walking through. I don't need a skinwalker or a Bigfoot to scare me. I know the ancientness of these hills. I know the wisdom these trees possess. I know the roots all tell their stories. And I know that it's home. And if it's home to me, it can be home to feral people, and it can be home to Bigfoot and not deer and all that stuff. And that, my friends, is the beauty of it all. So who knows if any of these creatures are real? Who knows? They might be, they might not be. Have some whimsy in your life and have some fun with it, because that's what it's all about at the end of the day. Thank you so much for watching this video. If you did enjoy it and you stayed till the end, you're a real one and I appreciate you. If you want to support what I'm doing here on the Spookly channel, leaving a like is the best way to do that. It helps the video. It's free. Helps me out and all that stuff too. You can also leave a comment if you have anything to say, and you can subscribe if you want to. It's also free. I upload here a couple times a month, and I'm really trying to make these videos more grandiose. I'm trying to travel more and explore more and do all that kind of stuff, and I want to bring you all along with me. So if you do like that, please leave a like. I'd really appreciate it. This was such a fun video to make. As you can tell, I love making videos about where I'm from. I love talking about it. Probably gets old, you probably hate it sometimes, but I love it, and I can never get tired of it. But thank you for everything you do. I love and appreciate each and every one of you. I wish you all the best, and I'll see you in the next video. Bye.